Hi everybody, welcome to Mission 5, Lesson 12. Today we're going to be comparing fractions using a number line. So our first question we're going to try to answer today is 2/6 greater than or less than 1/2? And the first thing I'm going to do is plot 1/2 immediately on my number line because I know where it lives. I know exactly where to put 1/2. Then what I need to do is think about how to find an equivalent fraction for 1/2 with 6. And I know that 3/6 is equal to 1/2. That tells me immediately that 3/6 is going to be my benchmark to look at to decide whether 2/6 is greater or less than 1/2. So I'm drawing my sixths, 1/6, 2/6, 3/6, 4/6, and 5/6. And my placement right there showed me that 2/6 is less than 1/2. Now we're going to find out, is 2/3 greater or less than 7/9? So the first thing I'm going to do is mark my thirds on my number line. So I know I have 1/3 there and 2/3 there because 0/3 and 3/3. Split my entire number line into thirds. Then what I have to do is find out a way to get my 2/3 into ninths. So 2/3 is equal to how many ninths? I'm finding a common denominator and making an equivalent fraction. I have to find 2/3 is equal to how many ninths? And I know that 3 times 3 is going to give me 9. So I have to do the same thing to the top. And 2 times 3 gives me 6. So I'm going to look up at my number line and notice that 2/3 is also equal to 6/9. That then immediately tells me that if I'm going to place 7/9 on my number line, it's going to be greater than 6/9 or 2/3. I'm finding equivalent fractions to find greater than or less than. Now let's move into, is 2/5 greater than 1/2? First thing I'm going to do is place my 1/2 right in the middle. Now this one's a little trickier because we need to find a common denominator between 5 and 2. What number can 5 and 2 both get into, or what are they factors of? And I know that 5 times 2 is going to give me 10. So I'm going to be looking at this as tenths and making my fractions equivalent to tenths. So the first thing I'm going to do is make an equivalent fraction 1/2 to tenths. So that's 1/2 is equal to 5/10. So I know that I'm going to place 5/10 on my number line. Then what I have to do is make an equivalent fraction for 2/5 in tenths. So 5 times 2 gives me 10. I have to do the same thing to the top. And 2 times 2 gives me 4. So by looking at the two equivalent fractions I just made, I know that 4/10 is going to be less than 5/10, or 2/5, because I made an equivalent fraction. So 2/5 is equivalent to is less than 1/2. Now we're going to try to place 2/6, 5/12, and 7/8 on this number line without making equivalent fractions and just kind of guessing. So the first thing we're going to do is try to just look at the numbers, the fractions that we have. And what I would do is try to first find their halves. So I know that if I'm dividing into 6ths and 12ths and 8ths, I'm going to first find their halves to find out where maybe I should put them on the number line. So 3/6 is a half, 6/12 is a half, and 4/8 is half. So by looking at that, I know that I need to put 2/6 below 1/2. 5/12 also goes below 1/2 because 6/12 is the half. And 7/8 is way above the half. It's pretty much 8/8, so it's almost a whole. So just by knowing the wholes and the halves, I'm able to place these numbers on my number line. That's what you guys are going to be doing during your Zern workshop today. Good luck.